Chapter 2906, Combating a Mental Strength Master. Chapter 2906, Combating a Mental Strength Master. Although Shifeng spoke in a tone that was neither humble nor arrogant, the surrounding passers-by and Hanifeng couldn't help falling silent, a hint of shock appearing in their eyes. That's the Infinity Master he's talking to. Has he lost his mind? Hanifeng felt his legs weaken when he saw Shifeng's unyielding attitude. For longtime residents of the upper zone, mental strength masters were existences that shouldn't be provoked, all the more so a mental strength master with 2-star high-grade authority. Even the base layer's top-ranking organizations wouldn't dare to offend such an existence. Mental strength masters with 2-star authority could not only banish people from the upper zone for long periods but also teach those who offended them a lesson with little to no repercussions. While the Green God Company might penalize the mental strength master by deducting their trade points and contribution points, such penalties were nothing for a mental strength master of such caliber. Although Shifeng's words and manner of speaking couldn't be considered offensive to Fu Jiuzhong, it was still a slap to the face for the Infinity Master. Hanifeng failed to understand why Shifeng would step forward himself instead of letting Qin Baiyi cover for him. In his opinion, Shifeng's action was simply insane. At this time, let alone Hanifeng, even Han Rongrong, who had been quite courageous before and even dared to challenge Shifeng, shuddered involuntarily in fear. This was because a bone-biting chill was enveloping her entire body right now. Killing intent. This was a frightening killing intent Han Rongrong had never experienced before. The killing intent was so intense that Han Rongrong, a half-step Hunglian Grandmaster, had the illusion that she would get killed the next moment. Her terror was so overwhelming that it had taken over her body, making her tremble despite herself. So, this is the strength of a 2-star master? Wei Yang Qianhen revealed an indescribably grim expression as she looked at Fu Jiuzhong, feeling somewhat uncomfortable before the Infinity Master's mental deterrence. She had sparred with Qin Baiyi previously, so she wasn't completely ignorant of the strength of mental strength masters. However, compared to Qin Baiyi, Fu Jiuzhong was on a completely different level. From sparring with Qin Baiyi, she had come to understand that his mental perception and brain activity were vastly superior to hers. If he was willing to pay the price, he could even increase his brain activity and perception sensitivity by more than tenfold at will, allowing him to make inhuman reactions. Fu Jiuzhong, on the other hand, wasn't just capable of simply boosting his thinking speed, he could already influence others with his mental will. It was akin to employing powerful hypnosis on his opponents. Most importantly, this mental deterrence wasn't directed at her but merely spillover. She found it truly hard to imagine what kind of hell the actual target of Fu Jiuzhong's mental power was experiencing right now. Of those present, only Qin Baiyi fared slightly better. Even so, he was still affected by Fu Jiuzhong's mental deterrence. Damn it! It's over. Fu Jiuzhong has actually broken through to that stage already. There's no way someone who hasn't reached the level of a mental strength master can resist this mental deterrence. Qin Baiyi inwardly cursed this situation as he endured Fu Jiuzhong's mental deterrence. In Qin Baiyi's opinion, Shifeng was an excellent seedling. Not only did Shifeng become a neutralizing grandmaster at a young age, but his mental strength standard had already reached the peak of the special grade. According to the report he received, Shifeng had even defeated several Hunglian grandmasters simultaneously. With such ability, Shifeng might very well be only half a step away from becoming a mental strength master. Originally, Qin Baiyi planned to learn more about Shifeng and then introduce Shifeng to his teacher. However, all of his plans were ruined now. Mental deterrence was something that liberated a person's deepest fears. For this reason, it was normal for the minds of people subjected to mental deterrence to collapse. If a person had weak willpower, they might even die on the spot. Even people with very strong willpower would suffer trauma when subjected to mental deterrence, which would impact their future mental growth. Normally, only 3-star mental strength masters could exhibit mental deterrence. Although Fu Jiuzhong's mental deterrence wasn't as strong as an actual 3-star master's, his use of this technique proved that he was already close to reaching the 3-star standard. He might have already taken a step into the stage. However, when Qin Baiyi turned to look at Shifeng, he was stunned. How is this possible? Fu Jiuzhong had clearly directed his mental deterrence at Shifeng. Yet, apart from wearing a slightly solemn expression, Shifeng showed no fear or discomfort on his face. It was evident that he could withstand the Infinity Master's mental deterrence. In fact, he was enduring it much better than even Qin Baiyi. Fu Jiuzhong remained mostly unfazed even after seeing Shifeng's reaction, sneering, "I initially had suspicions when I heard Tiandi say you might have become a mental strength master already, but I didn't think you had really become one." When Fu Jiuzhong finished speaking, everyone present turned to Shifeng in disbelief. Han Yifeng, in particular, was thunderstruck by this revelation. Is he still human? The first time Han Yifeng met Shifeng, the latter was merely the guild leader of a large guild. Although Shifeng possessed some strength at the time, it was still insignificant in Han Yifeng's eyes. The next time they met, Shifeng had already become a resident in the upper zone, with a considerable amount of resources that could be traded for contribution points. Now, Shifeng had even become a mental strength master, an existence many corporations operating in the upper zone's base layer feared. Shifeng's growth speed was simply out of this world. Han Yifeng wasn't the only one shocked by this revelation. Qin Baiyi similarly felt his heart pounding madly. A mental strength master under the age of 25? Previously, Qin Baiyi still had his doubts about Shifeng being a mental strength master. However, since Fu Jiuzhong had said so, then it must be true. Nevertheless, he found it difficult to digest this information. Mental strength masters were special existences in the upper zone, the goal of countless young talents. However, typically, one could already be proud of oneself if one became a mental strength master by the age of 60 or 70. Qin Baiyi's achievement of becoming a mental strength master in his 30s already made him a rare talent that only appeared once every several decades in Yuantian City's upper zone. However, compared to Shifeng, Qin Baiyi's achievement paled significantly. At Shifeng's age, the growth rate of his mental strength was still at its peak. Only after the age of 30 would his growth slow than 5 years of rapid growth. If he continued developing himself, he could definitely become a 3-star mental strength master in the future, and possibly even reach the legendary Grandmaster standard. When Qin Baiyi thought about the possibility of introducing Shifeng to his teacher, excitement filled his heart. However, before Qin Baiyi could grow excited for long, Fu Jiuzhong suddenly changed his tone and said coldly, "Your achievement of becoming a mental strength master might be excellent, but do you think you can behave arrogantly in front of me just because you've become one?" After saying so, Fu Jiuzhong suddenly punched at Shifeng. Although Fu Jiuzhong had only executed a textbook punch, in everyone's eyes, this punch seemed to carry the power of heaven and earth. The power of this punch was unstoppable, and everyone instinctively tried to run away. Not good. Qin Baiyi's expression immediately underwent a drastic change. Dodge it. Fu Jiuzhong's punch didn't just exude a mighty aura that daunted others' hearts. The Infinity Master had also removed the limiters on his body to exhibit 100% of his body's strength. Moreover, he had perfectly concentrated this strength into his fist. Even a bona fide 3-star master would have difficulty blocking this punch. It was evident that after seeing Shifeng's true potential, Fu Jiuzhong intended to cripple Shifeng to rid himself of a future threat. Shifeng, the target of Fu Jiuzhong's punch, understood how powerful the oncoming attack was. Fu Jiuzhong's fist wasn't the only threat like most people thought. There was also the intent from the Infinity Master's fist. Although the fist intent didn't have a tangible form, it was by no means harmless. Moreover, even if Shifeng could evade Fu Jiuzhong's fist intent, he couldn't dodge the punch itself. And although Shifeng didn't know how powerful Fu Jiuzhong's punch was, he had a hunch that if he allowed the fist to connect, he would end up either crippled or dead. And worse, he couldn't stop the punch with his current strength utilization technique. This was because he was currently incapable of removing all of the limiters his brain placed on his body. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. No. I will not let things end like this. As Shifeng watched Fu Jiuzhong's fist moving closer and closer to him, his brain raced, thinking of ways to block the punch. When Fu Jiuzhong's fist was only half a meter away, a potentially viable technique suddenly occurred to Shifeng, a technique he had wanted to use in the real world all this time but couldn't due to physical fitness and mental capacity limitations. Block it. With a shout, Shifeng concentrated the strength of his body and removed the limiters on his 2 arms. He then brandished his arms as if he were brandishing swords and instantly executed the sword technique he had used thousands of times in God's domain. Swords Transmigration. Chapter 2907, Taking on a 3-star Mental Strength Master. Chapter 2907, Taking on a 3-star Mental Strength Master. Bang! Along with the sound of an explosion, the ambient air fluctuated, and even those standing more than 10 meters away from Shifeng and Fu Jiuzhong felt these shock waves. The next moment, Fu Jiuzhong's punch came to an abrupt end, while Shifeng stumbled several steps back before he managed to stabilize his body. The outcome of the initial confrontation between the 2 mental strength masters was clear for all to see. However, this result had Han Yifeng and the others looking at Shifeng in shock and disbelief. He blocked it. How did he do it? Fu Jiuzhong's punch was akin to a behemoth's attack. One could tell how much power the punch carried just by looking at the shattered stone slabs under Fu Jiuzhong's feet. The upper zone's pavement was extraordinary, its hardness comparable to steel. Even a Honglian Grandmaster's full-powered attack would, at most, crack it. Yet, the stone slabs directly under Fu Jiuzhong's feet had basically disintegrated, while the adjacent slabs had web-like cracks spread across them. Fu Jiuzhong's punch could probably knock a car back over a dozen meters. The attack undoubtedly reached inhuman levels already. What did he do just now? Qin Baiyi stared at the uninjured Shifeng in confusion. Compared to the other spectators, Qin Baiyi had a far better understanding of how much power Fu Jiuzhong's punch carried. An entry-level mental strength master would be fortunate to sustain only minor injuries from the punch, let alone emerge intact. Typically, if the average human removed all of the limiters restricting their body, they could lift an entire car. Meanwhile, Fu Jiuzhong was a mental strength master who had tempered his body over several decades. One could easily imagine how much power he could exert if he removed his limiters and concentrated all his strength into his fist. Of course, executing such a move would also place a huge burden on the body. If an ordinary person tried replicating Fu Jiuzhong's move without having absolute control over their physical body, they would most likely end up crippled afterward. This was because the limiters the brain placed was a form of protection for one's body. However, it was a different story for mental strength masters of Fu Jiuzhong's caliber. Currently, not only did Fu Jiuzhong have perfect control over his body's strength, but he could also freely turn his body's limiters on and off. So long as he turned off his limiters the moment he attacked and instantly turned them back on after executing his attack, he could minimize the damage to his body. He might even be able to offset the damage completely by using his body's resilience. And this was also what made 3-star mental strength masters so frightening. On the other hand, Shifeng was evidently incapable of removing all of his body's limiters right now. Yet, by relying on a strange technique and incredible speed, he had successfully blocked Fu Jiuzhong's punch. More precisely, he had deflected the power of the Infinity Master's punch and received only part of the attack's power and impact. This feat was simply incredible. In reality, Qin Baiyi wasn't the only one surprised by this outcome. Shifeng himself felt shocked and ecstatic. He never thought his plan would succeed. Although he had failed to fully replicate Sword's transmigration just now, the incomplete technique still allowed him to resist Fu Jiuzhong's full-powered blow. However, Shifeng now felt his mind stagnating slightly, due to using Sword's transmigration with his mortal body. His brain had evidently overloaded itself to enable his body to execute the technique. He diverted my strength. Fu Jiuzhong eyed Shifeng in incomprehension. He couldn't understand how Shifeng's 2 strange chopping strikes had managed to scatter the power in his fist. At the moment of contact, he had felt some kind of power invade his body and deform his posture slightly. This, in turn, caused the power of his punch to plummet and allowed Shifeng to escape unscathed. Was it luck? Fu Jiuzhong shook his head, dismissing his thoughts. He promptly dashed toward Shifeng and executed a flurry of punches, giving him no time to catch a breather or create another miracle. Fu Jiuzhong had come to Yuantian City's upper zone intending to teach Shifeng a lesson, have Shifeng give up a significant portion of Zero Wing's shares, and avenge his student. After seeing Shifeng's potential, though, He realized there was no way the young man would give up Zero Wing's shares. However, reconciliation between them wasn't possible after Fu Jiuzhong had sent the various corporations' experts after Shifeng. Fu Jiuzhong also couldn't forgive the arrogant behavior Shifeng took in front of him. Hence, only one path remained open to Fu Jiuzhong: crippling Shifeng and utilizing his mental deterrence to arouse Shifeng's inner fears. Even if Shifeng was a mental strength master, this would still leave an indelible trauma in his heart. If that happened, Shifeng's future as a mental strength master would be over. And while Fu Jiuzhong would suffer repercussions from the Green God Company afterward, the penalty wouldn't be anything severe. After all, there was no way the Green God Company would choose to lose a 3-star mental strength master after already losing a young talent. Fu Jiuzhong executed his punches with all his might, without a fixed pattern. Of course, with how fast his attacks were, Fu Jiuzhong couldn't concentrate all his strength into every punch. Hence, the punches he currently executed were significantly weaker than his first one. Even so, they still weren't attacks an ordinary mental strength master could receive. After images of Fu Jiuzhong's fists filled the space between Fu Jiuzhong and Shifeng. Even ordinary mental strength masters, who could amplify their perception by more than tenfold, couldn't adequately capture every one of these punches with their senses. Is he nuts? Shifeng's complexion changed as he faced Fu Jiuzhong's attacks. Even an expert of Fu Jiuzhong's caliber would suffer serious injuries if he executed so many attacks without any limiters. The fact that he was doing so was simply ridiculous. However, Shifeng also had to admit that Fu Jiuzhong's attacks were effective. He could hardly keep up with the attacks, let alone execute Sword's transmigration to deflect them. When Fu Jiuzhong's punches were about to reach him, Shifeng gritted his teeth and liberated the limiters on his muscles once more. He then brandished his arms as if they were 2 long swords. Swords orbit. Bang! 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 Less than 1 meter separated Fu Jiuzhong and Shifeng as they clashed in front of the Green God Tower. Although none of the surrounding pedestrians could see the arms of either mental strength master, the numerous thunderous explosions and shock waves made everyone feel as if they were standing in a storm. 2 seconds into the clash, Shifeng began retreating step by step, evidently at a disadvantage. And although Shifeng had successfully deflected all of Fu Jiuzhong's punches thus far, his complexion grew paler and paler as time passed. Let's see how long you can last. Fu Jiuzhong sneered when he saw Shifeng's poor complexion. Although Fu Jiuzhong was sustaining heavy damage by executing so many attacks with his limiters fully liberated, the damage wasn't unbearable. At worst, he would have to consume life potions for a month, but all his injuries would eventually disappear as if they never existed. However, it was a different story for Shifeng. If the young man failed to hold on now, he would be crippled in the future. The seconds ticked by one after another. Qin Baiyi, who was watching the entire fight, grew increasingly anxious. "Senior brother, is there nothing you can do?" Wei Young Qianhen asked when she saw Shifeng's ashen face. In a frustrated tone, Qin Baiyi responded, "I want to step in, but the fight between them is no longer at a level where I can intervene. I might even make the situation worse for Shifeng. All we can do is wait for teacher to arrive." Qin Baiyi wanted nothing more than to intervene in the fight, but he simply lacked the ability to do so. After all, even after pushing his senses to their limits, he still couldn't keep up with Shifeng's and Fu Jiuzhong's movements. If he charged in recklessly, he might get sent flying by some random attack. 10 seconds into the fight, Fu Jiuzhong's complexion began turning red, while Shifeng's turned deathly pale. A look of deep fatigue also surfaced in Shifeng's eyes, and it was evident he could last only a few more seconds. Die! Fu Jiuzhong accelerated his punches when he noticed Shifeng faltering. He planned to end the fight right here and now. Upon seeing this, Qin Baiyi reflexively closed his eyes, while Wei Young Qianhen's complexion turned grim. Just as Fu Jiuzhong's fists were about to overwhelm Shifeng's defense, a rebuke suddenly echoed in everyone's ears. "Both of you, stop fighting this instant." Although this voice wasn't deafening, it still stimulated everyone's mind and compelled them to obedience. Among those present, only Fu Jiuzhong, Shifeng, and Qin Baiyi remained mostly unaffected by the voice. However, Immediately afterward, an incomparably powerful mental deterrence assaulted Fu Jiuzhong and Shifeng, causing them to stumble back several steps. This scene amazed the surrounding spectators, and everyone couldn't help wondering about the identity of the voice's owner. When everyone turned toward the voice's origin, what they saw were two people walking out of the Green God Tower's entrance. One was a beautiful woman with her black hair tied into a ponytail, and the other was a white-clad old man walking with a hunched back and a cane. Most of the people present quickly recognized the woman. She was none other than Xia Qingying, the base layer's general manager. The old man Xia Qingying was supporting, though, was someone unfamiliar to them. Only Qin Baiyi recognized the old man, and he couldn't help a look of panic and disbelief at seeing the old man. Looking at the approaching old man, Fu Jiuzhong gnashed his teeth and yelled, "Wu Yuan, I'm only teaching an arrogant kid a lesson. Are you going to interfere in this as well?" The white-clad old man's name was Xia Wu Yuan. In addition to being the middle-layer general manager of Yuantian City's upper zone, he was also a bona fide 3-star mental strength master, someone with real authority in Yuantian City's upper zone. Rumor had it that he was only half a step away from becoming a mental strength grandmaster. However, for Fu Jiuzhong, who had just recently become a 3-star mental strength master, Xia Wu Yuan wasn't an existence to fear. "Jiuzhong, this is Yuantian City's upper zone. Do you take this place for a joke?" Xia Wu Yuan said as he glanced at Fu Jiuzhong. "This matter ends here. Shifeng is already a talent Yuantian City's upper zone has set its eyes on. I won't sit still if you persist in making a scene." Xia Wu Yuan's words thundered in Fu Jiuzhong's ears, causing his expression to turn ugly. Fu Jiuzhong then glared at Shifeng and said coldly, "Consider yourself lucky today, kid. However, don't think you'll be as lucky next time." After saying so, Fu Jiuzhong got back into his maglev car together with Lu Tiandi and departed the area, disinclined to exchange any more words with Xia Wu Yuan. "Teacher, are we going to let Shifeng go, just like that?" Lu Tiandi asked. With them having thoroughly offended Shifeng, if they didn't cripple Shifeng now, he would definitely become a thorn in their side with his extraordinary potential. After taking a deep breath, Fu Jiuzhong shook his head and said, "That old ghost is already close to crossing that threshold. I can't go up against him. However, that doesn't mean I'll let that kid off. After I apply for 3-star high-grade authority and get it approved, I'll have one chance to train in the core area and solidify my gains. Once that happens, that kid won't be able to stop me as easily as he did today." Lu Tiandi breathed out a sigh of relief at Fu Jiuzhong's words. If Fu Jiuzhong could train in the upper zone's core area even for a short period, he would definitely return stronger and would have a much easier time dealing with Shifeng. Most importantly, Fu Jiuzhong could afford to do a lot more things once he gained 3-star high-grade authority. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, after Fu Jiuzhong and Lu Tiandi left, Shifeng hurriedly approached Xia Qingying and Xia Wu Yuan to thank them. If not for Xia Wu Yuan's intervention, Shifeng really would have succumbed to Fu Jiuzhong's attacks. "This little fellow has quite the talent," Xia Wu Yuan thought to himself as he scrutinized Shifeng. He then said, "Qingying mentioned you to me before. She said you were even more talented than Baiyi. I initially thought she was joking, so it is fortunate I had some business here today. Otherwise, Fu Jiuzhong would have crippled you. Thank you for helping me, Elder Xia." "Thank you as well, General Manager Xia," Shifeng said as he looked at Xia Wu Yuan and Xia Qingying nodding at Shifeng. Xia Qingying said, "You really surprised me. Although I've long since known you would become a mental strength master sooner or later, I didn't expect you to break through in such a short time. It seems I didn't invite my grandfather here in vain." Shifeng grew a little awkward after hearing Xia Qingying's words, unsure of how to explain himself. After all, his rapid growth was a complete accident. "Ahem, that's enough talking. You'll have plenty of chances to talk in the future," Xia Wu Yuan said, faking a cough. He then looked at Shifeng and said, "Kid, now that you've become a mental strength master, come with me to the middle layer." Chapter 2908, Middle Layer. Chapter 2908, Middle Layer. "We're going to the middle layer now?" Shifeng was a little surprised by Xia Wu Yuan's words. According to his understanding, While one could indeed live in the middle layer once one became a mental strength master, one would first need to clear the Green God Company's internal test and review. One couldn't enter the middle layer simply on the assumption that one was a mental strength master already. After all, the middle layer was an incredibly important location for the Green God Company. Even the middle layer's official residents needed to undergo strict inspections every time they entered and left. When Qin Baiyi overheard Xie Wuyuan's words, he was dumbfounded. Qin Baiyi still remembered that after he became a mental strength master, he had to go through an incredibly troublesome process to gain access to the middle layer. Yet, Shifeng could enter the middle layer before even receiving the Green God Company's recognition. However, Xie Wuyuan indeed had the authority to make such a decision as the middle layer's general manager. Even if Shifeng weren't a mental strength master, Xie Wuyuan could still bring him into the middle layer, just without official residential status. Of course. Although you haven't passed our internal test and review yet, the fact that you held your ground against Fu Zhouzhong proves that you are indeed a mental strength master, Xie Wuyuan said, nodding. He then smiled and continued, since you are now one of Yuantian City's upper zone's mental strength masters, you naturally have to get registered at the middle layer immediately. Or are you telling me you don't want the middle layer's residential status? Of course not, Shifeng said hurriedly. It will naturally be wonderful if I can get my residential status for the middle zone right now. The resources available to the middle layer's residents were beyond the reach of the base layer's residents. Specifically, he could purchase life water once he gained middle layer residential status. Good. Let's go, then. After Xie Wuyuan finished speaking, he waved his hand, and a maglev limousine marked with the Green God Company's logo descended from the sky. He then entered the limousine together with Xie Qingying and Shifeng, and the three of them flew straight toward the mountain's halfway point. At this sight, Hanifeng and the other corporation heirs aiming to enter the middle layer inevitably grew envious. Brother Shi's status is going to skyrocket now. Hanifeng was filled with complex emotions as he watched Shifeng depart. Hanifeng had constantly been seeking to gain the privilege to live in the middle layer. Yet, Shifeng now had this privilege at his fingertips. Shifeng had even gained the attention of Xie Wuyuan, the middle layer's general manager. Even after entering the middle layer, Shifeng would not have to fear being targeted. What a pity. Qin Baiyi also sighed inwardly at this situation. If the middle layer's big shots found out about Shifeng's talent, they would desperately try to get him as their student. Qin Baiyi's teacher wouldn't be an exception. Now, though, Xie Wuyuan had gotten ahead of everyone. A mental strength master, is it? I'll soon catch up to you. Unlike Qin Baiyi and the others, when Wei Yang Qianhen saw Shifeng departing for the middle layer, the urge to compete with Shifeng bloomed in her heart. On the other side, Shifeng's group arrived in the middle layer after going through multiple electronic scans and inspections. Upon entering the mist-shrouded area, Shifeng felt a significant portion of his accumulated mental fatigue clear up. The middle layer's recovery effects were drastically better than those of the large mansion's environment. When Xie Wuyuan brought Shifeng to a mansion flanked by a lush mountainside and a small waterfall, Shifeng was completely stunned by the environment. Isn't the environment here a little too amazing? It's at least twice as good as the environment I felt when I entered the middle layer. Even without doing anything, I can probably live up to 160 or 170 years old in such an environment, Shifeng exclaimed as he experienced the changes the mansion's environment brought to his body. This is one of only 20 top-tier mansions in the middle layer. Let alone 160 or 170, a Honglian Grandmaster can live up to 200 here without any problems, Xie Wuyuan said, chuckling. As the Green God Company's life technology continues improving, the lifespan of the middle layer's residents will also increase. Eventually, this place will let even ordinary people live up to 200 years old. As for mental strength masters like yourself, you might live to celebrate your 300th birthday. 300? Shifeng was a little dazed. 300 years was already enough for a change in dynasties during ancient times. That's right. Although it is still somewhat difficult to reach such an age in the middle layer right now, the improvement is only a matter of time, Xie Wuyuan said, nodding. However, if you become a mental strength grandmaster, reaching 300 won't be difficult at all. Are mental strength grandmasters that strong? Shifeng asked in surprise. With his current physical fitness, even with the support of life potions and the middle layer's environment, he could, at most, live to around 200 years old. He dared not think about living up to 300. Yet, Xie Wuyuan stated that a mental strength grandmaster could currently live up to 3 centuries. This was incredible. Of course, mental strength grandmasters are much stronger than you think. They can exert 100% control over their brains. To ordinary people, they are no different from gods. The Green God Company's creator was also a mental strength grandmaster, Xie Wuyuan said, awe and envy appearing on his face. Shifeng was stunned once more. The Green God Company was the most influential corporation in the world. The combined influence of every other corporation worldwide couldn't match the Green God Company's influence. Shifeng never imagined that the founder of this corporation was a mental strength grandmaster. This was simply unbelievable. Seeing Shifeng's dazed expression, Xie Wuyuan added, "You, too, have a small possibility of becoming a mental strength grandmaster. It is for this possibility that I brought you to the middle layer. Only by living here can you better develop your mental strength. Letting you remain in the base layer is simply a huge waste." Shifeng immediately came to a realization when he heard Xie Wuyuan's words. It was no wonder Xie Wuyuan brought him straight to the middle layer without undergoing the Green God Company's test. When Xie Wuyuan saw Shifeng's contemplative expression, he smiled faintly and asked, "You're thinking that with your potential, I'm underestimating you by saying that you only have a small possibility of becoming a mental strength grandmaster, right?" Shifeng didn't deny Xie Wuyuan's guess. In his opinion, if the Tier 5 concentration standard of God's domain represented the master standard for mental strength in the real world, then the Tier 6 concentration standard should correspond to the mental strength grandmaster standard. Meanwhile, Shifeng was relatively confident that he could get promoted to Tier 6 in his current state. After all, he had an ancient god's legacy. He even had items that improved concentration, such as the soul water and crystal of souls. Raising his concentration to the Tier 6 standard with the help of these items shouldn't be difficult. As if having seen through Shifeng's thoughts, Xie Wuyuan said, "Even if your concentration reaches the Tier 6 standard in God's domain, you will still be a long way from becoming a mental strength grandmaster. According to God's domain's concentration categorization, the Tier 6 concentration standard is only equivalent to the half-step mental strength grandmaster standard. Currently, you are still far from becoming a half-step grandmaster, let alone becoming an actual grandmaster. You are, at best, close to the 2-star master standard. The Tier 6 concentration standard is equivalent to only the half-step mental strength grandmaster standard." Shifeng was startled. Shifeng had experienced what it was like to have Tier 6 concentration thanks to the light of 2 worlds, and the experience was amazing beyond imagination. With Tier 6 concentration, he could suppress even ordinary Tier 5 existences with his mental oppression. Tier 4 players that weren't at the peak of Tier 4 would even lose consciousness on the spot. In his opinion, this should already be equivalent to the rumored mental strength grandmaster standard. Yet, according to Xie Wuyuan, that wasn't the case at all. If Xie Wuyuan was telling the truth, then Shifeng couldn't even begin to imagine how powerful a mental strength grandmaster's mind was. Can you not make it sound as if half-step mental strength grandmasters are very weak? I'll have you know that even Yuantian City's upper zone has only 3 half-step grandmasters, while some of the other upper zones have only 2. Our upper zone is considered above average already, Xie Wuyuan said, rolling his eyes at Shifeng. Also, I managed to assign you this top-tier mansion only because of one other person's recommendation. Otherwise, even with your excellent talent, you'd only get to live in a basic mansion in the middle layer. You'd need first to become a 3-star master to live here. Another person's recommendation? Shifeng grew curious. Most of his acquaintances in the upper zone lived in the base layer, and he knew none of the big shots living in the middle layer. You know this person. She's the person you've been secretly investigating. Her ID in God's domain is Phoenix Rain, Xie Wuyuan said. If not for this girl's recommendation, you would have received a similar treatment to the other mental strength masters. Phoenix Rain? Shifeng was surprised. She's also living in the middle layer? What is her current condition? Shifeng had conducted plenty of investigations into Phoenix Rain. After all, Ji Luorong was very concerned about her elder sister. However, he never managed to find any information. He never thought that he would receive news of Phoenix Rain from Xia Wuyuan. Moreover, it was even Phoenix Rain who had recommended him to the middle layer. I can only say that it isn't good. Apart from that, there is nothing else you should know right now, Xia Wuyuan replied, shaking his head. To be precise, you still don't have the qualifications to know. Her condition isn't good. Shifeng fell into deep thought. After a moment, he asked, Elder Xia, how do I get the qualifications you speak of? Originally, Shifeng didn't hold much hope of acquiring information about Phoenix Rain. This was because Phoenix Rain's situation definitely involved a huge secret. He was fortunate to obtain even this slight bit of information. But now that he was a mental strength master, if he could help Phoenix Rain, he would naturally do so. After all, Phoenix Rain had helped him a lot previously. Phoenix Rain's little sister, Ji Luorong, was now an important member of Zero Wing as well. There was no reason not to help. If you make a significant contribution to the Green God Company and elevate your authority to the 3-star high-grade status, you can know a little more, Xia Wuyuan said after giving the matter some thought. Significant contribution? Upon hearing that he had a chance, Shifeng asked hurriedly, may I know how many contribution points I will need for that? Significant contributions cannot be weighed using contribution points, Xia Wuyuan replied, shaking his head. If you want to make a significant contribution, the only available avenue for you right now is driving off the Outer World's NPC army in God's domain. If you can do that, you might even be able to meet with her. Repel the Outer World NPC army? Shifeng frowned slightly at Xia Wuyuan's answer. The Outer World's NPC army was different from the Outer World's player army. After all, the player army didn't even have a single Tier 5 player in its ranks. In contrast, the NPC army had Tier 5 NPCs and might even have demigod-level NPCs. Just stopping the NPC army's advance was already a difficult feat. Repelling it was simply impossible for the Eastern Continent's native forces. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You should stop thinking about this matter and focus on developing your mental strength, Xia Wuyuan said. Although you've become a mental strength master and entered the middle layer, Fu Jiuzhong has already become a 3-star master. If he's really intent on targeting you, you'll probably have to spend the rest of your life cooped up in here. Outside of the middle layer, he'll have plenty of ways to deal with you. Shifeng nodded in agreement. Currently, the Infinity Master indeed posed a significant threat to him. If Xia Wuyuan hadn't appeared today, Shifeng definitely would have suffered severe injuries. Moreover, he couldn't stay in the middle layer or upper zone forever, as he needed to manage Zero Wing's affairs in the outside world. Elder Xia, may I know how I can purchase life water? Shifeng asked. Shifeng might not be able to leave the upper zone right now, but with Fu Jiuzhong's status and pride, the latter definitely wouldn't stoop so low as to target Zero Wing's other members. After all, none of Zero Wing's other members could pose a threat to him. And if Fu Jiuzhong targeted Zero Wing's other members, the upper zone's other residents would look down upon him. However, Shifeng couldn't discount the possibility of Fu Jiuzhong having the upper zone's various corporations secretly target Zero Wing, either. Hence, the first thing Shifeng needed to do now was let Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose recover. With their strength, protecting Zero Wing from Fu Jiuzhong's henchmen wouldn't be difficult. Chapter 2909, Soul Improves. Chapter 2909, Soul Improves. Purchase life water. Looking at Shifeng's slightly pale complexion, Xia Wuyuan said in confusion, your current authority is 1-star high grade, so you're allowed to exchange for only 1 bottle per year. However, the main purpose of life water is to replenish life. With a mental strength master's regenerative abilities, you can just use the life potions or the meditation potions exclusive to the middle layer to repair minor physical or mental damages. Are you sure you want to exchange for life water? I can only exchange for 1 bottle per year. Shifeng frowned slightly at Xia Wuyuan's words. In Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose's current condition, they would easily survive for more than a year if they lived in the base layer's large mansion. However, Zero Wing couldn't afford to wait for a year. After all, Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose had many responsibilities they needed to handle. This was especially true for the management of the guild's headquarters in the real world. Fire Dance and Lei Bao couldn't manage the entire headquarters by themselves. Not to mention, Fire Dance and the others would be coming to the upper zone to train soon. There are alternatives available if you wish to exchange for more life water, Xia Qingying said when she saw Shifeng's disappointed look. Smiling faintly, she continued, as you managed to become a mental strength master before the age of 30, the Green God Company will be giving you a reward. A reward? Shifeng immediately grew interested. That's right. It is a reward for mental strength masters under the age of 30, Xia Wuyuan said, nodding in agreement. However, I do not recommend you use this reward to exchange for life water. This reward is something even 3-star masters desire greatly, as it can be used to redeem the privilege to enter and train in the core area, which is the top layer of this mountain. This privilege is for 1 month, and it will greatly help in the development of your mental strength. Normally, only after a person becomes a 3-star master would they get an opportunity to exchange for this privilege, and it's for only 10 days. Compared to this privilege, life water is something you can redeem any time. Are you certain you want to exchange for life water? Yes. Shifeng answered without hesitation. All right, then. I really don't know what's going through the minds of you young people these days, Xia Wuyuan sighed when he saw Shifeng's determined expression, evidently dissatisfied with Shifeng's decision. He then turned to Xia Qingying and said, I still have to report this matter to the higher-ups, so I'll leave the rest of the explanation to you. Xia Qingying nodded obediently in response. After Xia Wuyuan finished speaking, he turned away and left the mansion, having no intention of continuing his conversation with Shifeng. Shifeng smiled bitterly at the old man's reaction. Don't mind it too much. Grandpa is just grumpy that you failed to meet his expectations. He doesn't know your circumstances, Xia Qingying consoled Shifeng after seeing Xia Wuyuan leave. Since you wish to exchange for life water, you need only 2 bottles, correct? I can exchange for 2 bottles? Shifeng was stunned. Originally, he thought that he could obtain only 1 bottle of life water as his reward and that he would have to spend trade points and contribution points to exchange for the other one. However, based on Xia Qingying's tone, it appeared that he could receive more than just 1 bottle of life water as his reward. This reward allows you to exchange for 3 bottles of life water. If you only need 2 bottles, I recommend you replace the remaining bottle with meditation potions. The meditation potion is more effective than the phantom potion and also functions to repair a person's mental state. Normally, a 1-star master can exchange for only 5 bottles per year. But if you trade in your 3rd bottle of life water, you can get 10 meditation potions. Okay, I'll take the 10 meditation potions, Shifeng said with a nod, astonished by the reward the Green God Company offered. This reward was hundreds of times better than what he received for clearing the mental path above the age of 20. Shifeng couldn't help being in awe of the Green God Company's generosity. Now, he realized how valuable the privilege to enter the top layer was. It was no wonder Xia Wuyuan felt disappointed at his decision. Nodding at Shifeng's reply, Xia Qingying said, You probably can't return to the base layer anytime soon, so I'll pass the life water to those 2 on your behalf. As for the meditation potions, you can exchange for them through the mansion's storage room. I'll have to trouble you with that, General Manager Xia, Shifeng said gratefully. It's no trouble. This is also within the scope of my duties. You are, after all, a talent I discovered. If you perform well in the middle layer, it'll be of great help to me, Xia Qingying said, waving her hand. All right, I won't disturb your rest any longer. After saying so, Xia Qingying boarded another maglev limousine and departed the middle layer, leaving Shifeng alone to observe his top-tier mansion. Compared to the base layer's large mansion, this waterfall mansion had a slightly larger footprint. The waterfall alone occupied an area of 2 basketball courts. The water vapor coming from the waterfall was also incredible. Shifeng felt his body becoming refreshed after inhaling only a mouthful of it. The regenerative effects of this water vapor probably nearly rivaled those of the S-rank nutrient fluid without any side effects. This small waterfall was an unlimited supply of weakened S-rank nutrient fluids. If sold to the outside world, it could definitely fetch an astronomical price. Probably no corporation in the outside world would ever dream that something like this waterfall could exist. After all, S-rank nutrient fluids were incomparably precious to the outside world's corporations, with only a very limited amount available each year. In fact, even the corporations operating in the upper zone's base layer would never think of drinking S-rank nutrient fluids like water. After Shifeng finished marveling at the waterfall, he made his way into the mansion. So this is why anyone who has lived in the middle layer before would never wish to leave it again. Realization dawned upon Shifeng as he looked at the hall in front of him. After he entered the mansion and closed the doors, the sound of splashing water cut off completely. The mansion's sound insulation was perfect. In addition, the special energy flowing inside the mansion was twice as strong as outside. If ordinary people lived in such an environment, even if they did nothing but lie on the ground, their physical fitness would still reach the half-step Honglian Grandmaster standard. If they trained their bodies a little, developing their physical fitness to the standard of Honglian Grandmasters would be no trouble at all. Moreover, this special energy also had an effect on a person's mental state, allowing a person to remain mentally energized as well as maintain an ethereal mood. If a person trained in such an environment for a long period, even if they didn't become a mental strength master, they would be close. Shifeng could easily imagine how scary it would be to go from living in such an environment to living in the base layer's environment. The transition would be akin to being a billionaire living a rich and happy life in one moment and then suddenly becoming an ordinary person in the next moment. No ordinary human could possibly accept such a drastic change. It also explained why Fang Shihan was so adamant in preserving her middle layer reserve slot. So long as Fang Shihan could remain in the middle layer, her chances of becoming a mental strength master would be at least double than if she lived in the base layer. Is this the storage room? While touring the mansion, Shifeng noticed a small room made entirely out of some unique metal. When he entered the room and accessed the interface inside, he had to marvel at the Green God Company's financial prowess. According to the introduction displayed, the storage room housed all the resources available for exchange in the middle layer. This storage room even had life water stocked. Through the storage room, he could immediately obtain the potion he wanted. He wouldn't have to spend time on a trip to the Green God Tower during emergencies. This was a great convenience provided to the middle layer's residents. Seeing this, Shifeng decided to give this exchange system a try. The next moment, several laser scanners scanned Shifeng's body and acquired his biometric data. After verifying his identity, the room's interface displayed the resources available to him. Currently, he had 10 meditation potions to his name, each worth 4 million trade points and 100,000 contribution points. 4 million trade points might not be anything to the base layer's corporations, but 100,000 contribution points was an entirely different story. Even the Five States Corporation would have a heart attack if it had to spend so many contribution points on one item. For the time being, Shifeng chose to redeem only one meditation potion. According to the product introduction, the meditation potion had to be stored in a special environment. And if taken out of storage, it could last for only 1 day in the outside world. After 1 day, the drug would lose its effects. Hence, he should only exchange for the amount he needed. How interesting. When Shifeng spread his mental perception over the dark blue potion in his hand, he actually sensed weak mental fluctuations from it. Normally, he would pick up such mental fluctuations only from living creatures. However, he didn't dwell on the matter, consuming the meditation potion immediately. After all, his mental state was in dire need of it right now. Shifeng had kept his brain overclocked throughout his fight with Fu Jiuzhong. While he had managed to smile and converse normally with Xia Wuyuan and Xia Qingying earlier, that was possible only because of his powerful willpower. If someone else were in his shoes, they probably would have passed out already. The moment Shifeng consumed the meditation potion, the scorching heat he felt in his brain instantly cooled. His complexion also rapidly changed from pale white to rosy amazing. This is simply amazing. Shifeng was dumbfounded when he sensed his mental state. With just one meditation potion, not only did he fully recover from his weakened state, But his mental state had also become surprisingly excellent. He even sensed faint improvements to his mental perception. These changes felt as if he had just consumed a crystal of souls from God's domain. With the meditation potion's effects, I will definitely improve further after consuming 10 bottles. This really makes a person wonder how the Green God Company managed to produce such a miracle drug. If this thing can be mass-produced, it will become possible to mass-produce mental strength masters. Shifeng was astounded as he looked at the 9 remaining meditation potions he could exchange. After recovering to peak condition, Shifeng promptly logged back into God's domain. Although he currently didn't have any good ideas on how to repel the Outer World's NPC army, he could share the news of Phoenix Rain's location and condition with Ji Luorong. This would, at least, give Ji Luorong some hope, and the girl wouldn't have to worry about her elder sister's whereabouts every day. Twin Towers Kingdom, Sky Spring City. When Shifeng entered God's domain again, he was surprised to find that his perception of the world around him had changed slightly. What's going on? Shifeng was greatly confused as he perceived the world around him. For some reason, his brain's recognition of God's domain was a bit different, and the world of God's domain now felt even more realistic than before. Is it because I used a combat technique in the real world? Shifeng could sense that his soul was stronger. This, in turn, directly elevated his concentration, which was previously almost Tier 5 advanced rank, to the Tier 5 peak rank. Now, he was only half a step from Tier 6 concentration. However, before Shifeng could snap out of his daze, he suddenly received a call from Fang Shahan. Guild leader, are you alright? Fang Shahan asked worriedly as she looked at Shifeng through the video call. I heard you clashed with Fu Jiuzhong. Fu Jiuzhong is now a 3-star mental strength master in Haitian City's upper zone. Even if you're a mental strength master, your body will still be affected significantly after fighting with him. The existence of 3-star mental strength masters was no secret to middle-layer residents. It wasn't difficult for the base layer's top-tier corporations to find out about them, either. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU relax. I've made a full recovery already, Shifeng replied, smiling. He was even tempted to say that should he clash with Fu Jiuzhong again, he definitely wouldn't end up in as miserable a state as before. That's wonderful. Fang Shahan breathed out a sigh of relief. She then said, Guild leader, while you were logged off, the Outer World NPCs started their invasion. Several empires have already clashed with the Outer World NPCs and suffered heavy casualties. According to our estimates, the battle at the Twin Towers Kingdom will begin soon. So far, I've already contacted the various powers based in the Twin Towers Kingdom, Star Moon Kingdom, and several neighboring kingdoms that aren't embroiled in the war for a meeting in Sky Spring City. However, I'm not particularly confident we can get the neighboring kingdoms' player forces to cooperate with us since the superpowers based in the engaged empires are doing their best to recruit them. Alright, I understand, Shifeng said, nodding. Also, tell them that our meeting venue will be changed to Star Moon City. Change the venue to Star Moon City? Fang Shahan was a little confused. While Zero Wing indeed possessed a guild residence in Star Moon City, the royal capital wasn't one of Zero Wing's main NPC cities. Hence, Zero Wing didn't have much manpower available there. Meanwhile, organizing the meeting this time required a lot of manpower. Not to mention, in terms of quality and quantity, Zero Wing's members in Sky Spring City were far superior to those in Star Moon City. If they held the meeting in Sky Spring City, Zero Wing could better display its current strength and raise the various player forces' confidence in defending the Twin Towers Kingdom. Set it at Star Moon City. Shifeng said in a determined tone. I understand. I'll notify them right away. Fang Shahan didn't pursue the matter. She then disconnected the call and began contacting the various powers. Meanwhile, Shifeng promptly teleported to Star Moon City and went straight to the War God's temple there. Previously, the branch temple Lord Howard Ragewind had promised Shifeng that he would handle all of the necessary procedures for Zero Wing to garrison Star Moon Kingdom. Now that so much time had passed, the branch temple lord should be mostly done. Chapter 2910, Kingdom's Foundation. Chapter 2910, Kingdom's foundation. When Shifeng entered the War God's Temple's first-floor hall, a level 180, Tier 4 general manager approached him in a respectful manner. Upon seeing this sight, the players looking to pick up quests from the War God's Temple turned to Shifeng with envious and curious gazes. Who is that guy? Why is the general manager personally receiving him? I recall some Tier 4 experts coming to pick up quests some time ago. That general manager didn't bat an eye at them, yet he's actually taking the initiative to welcome a player now. Could that guy be Black Flame? He must be Black Flame. I heard Black Flame always moves alone and loves concealing his identity. Out of all the players operating in Star Moon Kingdom, only Black Flame might get the general manager to treat him with such respect. Shortly after the players in the hall observed Shifeng's cloaked figure, passionate flames flared up in their eyes. They also began approaching him, hoping to take pictures or videos as mementos of meeting the legendary Sword Saint. After all, Black Flame was a living legend in the current God's domain. He was also the reason many new players had chosen to play the swordsman class. In no time at all, posts with titles such as Sword Saint Black Flame appears in War God's Temple and Sword Saint Black Flame seen in Starmoon City began appearing on Starmoon Kingdom's official forums one after another. This situation rendered Shifeng speechless. He had initially used the Nightwalker's cape to conceal his identity. Nevertheless, these cunning players still managed to identify him almost immediately. Lord Sword Saint, the Temple Lord instructed me to give you this should you visit us, the general manager said respectfully as he proffered a rolled-up parchment. The contract's contents will take effect as soon as you sign it. After receiving the parchment scroll, Shifeng nodded and said, "Please thank the Temple Lord for me." The contract the general manager handed Shifeng held the signature of Starmoon Kingdom's ruler. Once Shifeng signed his name on the contract, Zero Wing would officially garrison Starmoon Kingdom and become its representative guild. At that time, Zero Wing would be able to dictate the kingdom's development and even mobilize the kingdom's army. After reading the contract's contents, Shifeng signed it without hesitation. The sound of a system notification immediately entered his ears. System, congratulations. Your guild, Zero Wing, has officially garrisoned Starmoon Kingdom and become the kingdom's representative guild. Zero Wing will now enjoy a portion of the kingdom's management rights. At the same time, a system announcement rang throughout Starmoon Kingdom. Starmoon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for officially garrisoning Starmoon Kingdom and becoming the kingdom's representative guild. Zero Wing will now enjoy a portion of the kingdom's management rights. The system announcement echoed in the minds of the Starmoon Kingdom's players 3 times, triggering an uproar among the kingdom's players. What's going on? Zero Wing garrisoned the kingdom? Didn't they say that only the reserve guilds of God's domain's 12 great guilds are qualified to garrison a country? The sudden system announcement confused many players. Zero Wing's members, though, were exhilarated, especially the guild's new members. After this announcement, even a fool would understand that Zero Wing now had the final say in everything inside Starmoon Kingdom. Now, even the superpowers wouldn't dare interfere in the kingdom's matters. With this development, Zero Wing's newcomers could not only grind without worry within the kingdom but also gain access to numerous kingdom quests unavailable to other players. These kingdom quests would instantly resolve Zero Wing's concerns of developing its newcomers. Many of Starmoon Kingdom's player forces could already imagine Zero Wing's future rapid development. After all, now that Zero Wing had Starmoon Kingdom as a buffer, the guild could recruit new members without worrying about training resources. It wouldn't have to recruit only Tier 3 elite players and above. While elite players were indeed stronger than ordinary players, they made up only a small portion of God's domain's player base. And with Zero Wing's current size, the guild might be able to defend its existing territory, but it would face great difficulty if it wanted to expand. However, this development resolved Zero Wing's weakness. Good. I finally did it. Shifeng smiled spontaneously when he saw the system notification. Immediately afterward, he left the War God's Temple and made his way to Starmoon Kingdom's national treasury. Guilds that garrisoned an entire kingdom or empire actually received a massive hidden benefit. Apart from the monthly tribute from the garrisoned country, Representative guilds also gained access to the country's national treasury. A country's national treasury housed heirlooms that served as the country's foundation. And while players could exchange for these heirlooms using resources, they had to have the status of a Grand Duke in the country. Although Shifeng didn't have the status of a Grand Duke in Star Moon Kingdom, he had the status of an elder in the War God's Temple. In God's domain, an elder of the War God's Temple sat higher than even the Grand Dukes of empires. Shifeng naturally wouldn't have any problems exchanging for the heirlooms in a kingdom's national treasury. Meanwhile, royal heirlooms were far more valuable than what one could normally obtain through killing powerful monsters. They were items that could change the fate of an entire kingdom or empire. Hence, once a guild became a reserve guild of the 12 great guilds, dethroning it was incredibly difficult. In no time at all, Shifeng arrived at the palace and reached the treasury unhindered. It was no exaggeration to say that the national treasury was the safest location in the entire Star Moon Kingdom. 8 level 180, tier 4 NPCs stood guard at the entrance alone. Moreover, these 8 NPCs were no ordinary NPCs. Although none of them wielded a legendary weapon, they were all clad in fragmented legendary set equipment. In terms of individual strength, these NPCs were more than capable of holding their ground against ordinary tier 5 existences. Apart from these 8 NPCs, there was also a level 200, tier 4 Knight Captain stationed inside the treasury. The Knight Captain sported a legendary chest plate, and his combat power had undoubtedly reached the tier 5 threshold. Most importantly, a magic barrier enveloped the entire treasury. If one wished to break through this magic barrier, one would need a force of 3 to 5 tier 5 existences, at the very least. Lord Sword Saint, may I know what business you have here? The Knight Captain asked respectfully when Shifeng entered the treasury. I'm here to exchange for the items here, Shifeng stated. Please follow me. The Knight Captain then led Shifeng to the after descending 4 floors and walking for around half an hour, Shifeng arrived in front of a secret room enclosed by a magic barrier. Sitting quietly inside the room was an old man who made Shifeng feel pressured. A tier 5 Grand Wizard. Shifeng was a little surprised when he saw the old man. Star Moon Kingdom's foundation was far stronger than he expected. After all, apart from being a tier 5 existence, the old man in front of him also wore a legendary hat. Ordinary tier 5 existences who tried to invade the treasury would only get roundly thrashed by this old man. Lord Sword Saint, please enter, the Knight Captain said while respectfully gesturing for Shifeng to enter the secret room. From the Knight Captain's actions, Shifeng guessed that the other party could go only as far as the secret room's entrance. After giving the Knight Captain a nod, Shifeng stepped into the room. Shifeng immediately noticed the room's uniqueness. The environment here resembled the ancient era's environment, which was already rare in the current God's domain. Lord Sword Saint, since you have already signed a contract with His Majesty, according to the contract, you are qualified to exchange for one of the items here, the old man said as he looked at Shifeng. He then waved his hand, summoning 3 items in front of Shifeng. The founding king left behind these 3 items. These items are why our Star Moon Kingdom was able to rise up in the main continent. I hope one of them can be of help to you. When Shifeng saw the 3 items before him, his eyes bulged immediately. This was because Star Moon Kingdom's foundation far exceeded Shifeng's expectations, so much so that he wondered how a kingdom could have such a powerful foundation. The 3 items before him were neither inferior divine artifact ranked items or legendary ranked items. Instead, they were 2 designs and 1 recipe, and any of them could influence even an empire's development. The first to enter Shifeng's eyes was the design for a mysterious iron flying ship, which was many times stronger than the Crimson Dragon flying ship, an advanced flying ship. Not only was it capable of going up against Tier 4 superior mythic monsters, but its strongest attack even reached the Tier 5 intermediate standard. It could tear through the defensive magic arrays of cities like paper. Moreover, it had a maximum carrying capacity of 300 people. However, it cost a mind-blowing one. 5 million gold coins and 1 million magic crystals to exchange for the mysterious iron flying ship's design. The second item that drew Shifeng's eyes was the recipe of the Divine Power Potion, a Grandmaster Potion. As the potion's name suggested, players would gain divine power when they consumed the potion. For half an hour, players would have their tier elevated by 1, up to a maximum of tier 4. Although Shifeng had heard of potions that raised a player's tier by 1, he had never heard of any that could raise a player's tier to tier 4. Moreover, the potion even had a long duration of 30 minutes. In the current era where tier 4 players were still as rare as a phoenix's feather, the recipe for the divine power potion was priceless. Even an ordinary first-rate guild would become an existence feared by the 5 great super guilds should it get its hands on this recipe. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, this recipe cost 1 million gold coins and 1.5 million magic crystals. The last item to enter Shifeng's eyes was the design for a combat puppet, a secret silver combat puppet. Throughout both his lives, Shifeng had seen a secret silver combat puppet only once. In God's domain, bronze combat puppets possessed power at the tier 3 peak standard. Even in the current God's domain, a bronze combat puppet was an incredibly powerful existence. Unless a tier 4 existence appeared, a bronze combat puppet was unlikely to get destroyed. Above bronze combat puppets were mysterious iron combat puppets, which possessed combat power at the tier 4 peak standard. They could go toe-to-toe against bona fide tier 4 players. As for secret silver combat puppets, they possessed strength at the tier 5 basic standard. Tier 4 existences would have a very difficult time destroying a secret silver combat puppet, and normally only tier 5 existences could damage one. Meanwhile, the design for the secret silver combat puppet cost 2 million gold coins and 1 million magic crystals. Chapter 2911, Heirlooms Secured. Chapter 2911, Heirlooms Secured. Shifeng hesitated over the Star Moon Kingdom's 3 royal heirlooms. All 3 treasures could help a kingdom rise to prominence and a guild to reach the apex of God's domain instantly. Moreover, each had its advantages. I can exchange for only one? Shifeng couldn't help asking. Only one, the old man replied with a smile. However, if you manage to help elevate Star Moon Kingdom into an empire, you are free to exchange for all 3. Promotion to an empire? Shifeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. While he knew of a few ways to get a kingdom promoted into an empire, none of these methods was easy to realize. They all needed a long time to accomplish. After thinking up to this point, Shifeng suddenly had an idea. He then asked the old man, "What if I offer to swap heirlooms?" Heirlooms could be categorized into royal heirlooms, imperial heirlooms, continental heirlooms, and world heirlooms. In the past, the players that had the fortune to come across an unidentified royal or imperial heirloom would do everything they could to find the fallen country the heirloom used to belong to. Since these heirlooms were treasures left behind by fallen kingdoms and empires, so long as one successfully identified the heirloom, one could use it to re-establish that kingdom or even empire. However, locating kingdoms and empires that had long since disappeared from God's domain wasn't easy. The endeavor rivaled a legendary quest in difficulty. Take Shifeng for example. Although he had found an imperial heirloom very early into the game, he still hadn't managed to find any clues to the empire the heirloom belonged to. However, this didn't particularly surprise him. After all, at this stage of the game, players had explored less than 20% of God's domain's maps. Indeed, even now, the players of God's domain had explored barely 15% of the world's maps. In God's domain, human kingdoms and empires occupied only a small portion of the world's territories. Most of the 2 main continents consisted of level 150+ neutral maps, and only after 40% of the game's player base reached level 180, tier 3 or above could players adequately explore these maps. Not to mention, this was only the 2 main continents. There was still the vast ocean in God's domain, which held innumerable islands, some as large as kingdoms and empires. Hence, finding a fallen empire in God's domain was unbelievably difficult. This was why one of the top 10 rookie guilds in the past, which had acquired an unidentified imperial heirloom through an auction, had used this imperial heirloom to exchange for an identified royal heirloom from a kingdom. Afterward, the guild saw explosive growth and quickly became one of the reserve guilds of God's domain's 12 great guilds at the time. Although Shifeng wasn't sure how that guild had conducted the exchange, It would be a huge waste if he didn't ask if he could conduct a similar exchange. Swap heirlooms. The old man was a little stunned by Shifeng's question. After pondering for some time, he said, "That's possible, but are you willing to pay such a huge price?" "What is the price?" Shifeng asked. "Firstly, you'd need to find an unidentified imperial heirloom. Secondly, you'd need to pay double the price for a royal heirloom," the old man answered. "Double?" Shifeng was flabbergasted. A royal heirloom was by no means cheap, and all three of the royal heirlooms before him cost upwards of 1 million gold coins and 1 million magic crystals. If this price were doubled, even superpowers couldn't afford them. That's right. However, the most important part is still the imperial heirloom. Without it, it won't matter how many resources you offer, the old man said, nodding. "Deal. I'll trade an unidentified imperial heirloom for the mysterious iron flying ship. I'll also use my exchange opportunity for the secret silver combat puppet," Shifeng said, gritting his teeth as he took out the imperial heirloom sitting inside his bag. Before visiting the royal treasury, he had already taken all the funds Zero Wing could spare. However, he only had a total of 5 million gold coins and 3 million magic crystals on him. After all, the recruitment of NPC soldiers and the construction of defensive structures in Ancient Rock City cost a lot of money and resources. Although Zero Wing City and Ancient Rock City were raking in a significant income now, it still wasn't enough to cover Ancient Rock City's development costs. "You actually have one." The old man was surprised to see the imperial heirloom in Shifeng's hands. "Yes, so hurry up with the exchange." Shifeng nodded with an aching heart. "All right. That will be 5 million gold coins and 3 million magic crystals in total," the old man said as he extended his hand to Shifeng. "Verify the amount," Shifeng said as he transferred the necessary amount of coins and magic crystals to the old man's spatial bag. After verifying that the amount was correct, the old man waved his hand, and 2 ancient designs flew to Shifeng. When Shifeng saw these 2 designs, his heart pounded with excitement. Although purchasing these 2 designs had nearly bankrupted him, their value was immeasurable. Now, all he needed to do was gather the necessary materials and begin mass production. The materials needed are certainly extraordinary. Even the most common of these materials is incredibly rare in the current God's domain. Producing both of these items will also require a ton of Titan gold and magic elven stones. Veins of Titan gold ore were considered grade 2 veins in God's domain and incredibly rare, but they were the only way players could acquire Titan gold ore in large quantities. Other types of grade 2 veins produce Titan gold ore only occasionally. Overall, Titan gold was super rare, and just 1 ingot could sell for over a dozen gold coins. As for the magic elven stone, acquiring it had given Shifeng a headache when he was planning to construct the Crimson Dragon flying ship. However, the Crimson Dragon flying ship's construction cost was nothing compared to the mysterious iron-ranked Blue Thunder flying ship. Even if he excluded the other materials required, just the 5,000 ingots of Titan gold and 600 magic elven stones required would already cost a fortune. As for the secret silver-ranked flame beast puppet, its construction required 1,000 ingots of Titan gold and 200 magic elven stones. Both items required magic elven stones in significant quantities to produce. Fortunately, when Yang Ya and Cleansing Whistle returned from the ancient era, they had brought back plenty of magic elven stones. Currently, Zero Wing had a stockpile of over 4,000 magic elven stones, just barely enough to construct an adequate number of Blue Thunder flying ships and flame beast puppets. The only problem now was the Titan gold. Zero Wing only had around 30,000 ingots. While Shifeng was studying the 2 designs, Fang Shahan suddenly called him. "Guild leader." The guild leaders and representatives of the Twin Towers Kingdom and Starmoon Kingdom's various player forces have arrived. However, hardly any guilds from the neighboring kingdoms showed up, Fang Shahan said in frustration. None of the 2 superpowers came, and only 3 of the 8 first-rate guilds showed up. As for second-rate guilds, they number less than 20. This attendance rate was abysmally low. The guilds that came to help from the several neighboring kingdoms were fewer than the guilds in Starmoon Kingdom. Not to mention, neither of the 2 superpowers decided to show up. Are they all waiting to jack up the price? Shifeng chuckled. He could understand the two superpowers' refusal. After all, the various superpowers had a lot of territories to cover, and they focused mainly on defending empires. However, there was no excuse for first- and second-rate guilds that weren't involved in the war to withhold their help. The only reason they decided not to show up at Zero Wing's war meeting had to be that they considered this a good opportunity to make a profit. If Zero Wing wished to get their help, then it would have to pay a price. Revealing a bitter smile, Fang Shahan said, "The first-rate guilds that aren't attending indeed have such an intention. In return for their full support, they are demanding the rights to purchase private houses and guild residences in Zero Wing City or Ancient Rock City. They say that the other superpowers have already promised them such conditions. However, if we agree to their demands, then they will choose to help our side instead." Shifeng's act of devastating the Outer Worlds player army with a single attack had indeed caused a huge sensation in God's domain. It had also prompted most of the superpowers targeting Zero Wing to abandon their ambitions. Many of the Twin Towers Kingdoms and Star Moon Kingdom's independent experts had even returned to help in the two kingdoms' defense. Most importantly, the number of players seeking to join Zero Wing had also skyrocketed. Unfortunately, all these changes still weren't enough to persuade the unengaged player forces to help Zero Wing. This was because the Outer Worlds NPC army was more formidable than the Outer Worlds player army. There were multiple Tier 5 NPCs in the NPC army, and the upcoming battlefield would span a significant portion of the Twin Towers Kingdom's border. All sorts of siege battles and guerrilla warfare would take place, and there was no way Shifeng could be present for every one of these fights. Moreover, the NPC army on the Twin Towers Kingdom and Star Moon Kingdom side was significantly weaker than the Outer Worlds NPC army. Because of mythology and solar temples interference, the neighboring kingdoms uninvolved in the war didn't send their armies to reinforce the Twin Towers Kingdom and Star Moon Kingdom but to other kingdoms and empires. Hence, the NPC army defending the Twin Towers Kingdom consisted of the NPCs of only the two kingdoms. Although the Outer Worlds NPC army had split up into several dozen smaller groups and the detachment marching toward the Twin Towers Kingdom didn't have player support, this detachment could still put the two kingdoms' joint army through hell. Hence, a large number of players was needed to fight the Outer Worlds NPCs. And realizing this fact, the neighboring kingdoms' first-rate guilds naturally wouldn't miss the opportunity to get a cut of Zero Wing's resources. Good. Very good. Shifeng smiled when he heard Fang Shahan's words. Tell those first-rate guilds that they can come if they want. But if they don't, then they can forget about coming to us in the future. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. This, Shifeng's reply rendered Fang Shahan momentarily speechless. If she relayed Shifeng's words to those 5 first-rate guilds, it would be no different from severing all ties between Zero Wing and these first-rate guilds. Meanwhile, the War of Worlds wouldn't end in just one day. As both sides continuously grew stronger and more numerous, it would end up a war of attrition between God's domain and the outer world. If Zero Wing rejected the help of these guilds now, it would have much more difficulty finding helpers in the future. After all, battles were taking place all over the eastern continent, and everywhere was lacking in manpower. It was also why the superpowers tolerated the various first- and second-rate guilds' absurd demands. Otherwise, the superpowers would have long since dealt with these large guilds. Shifeng naturally understood what Fang Shahan was trying to say. He waved the 2 designs in his hand and smiled, saying, "Look what I have here." Chapter 29:12, Confidence. Chapter 29:12, Confidence. When Shifeng took out 2 old and tattered designs, Fang Shahan initially discounted them. She still thought that his decision was too rash. While the 5 first-rate guilds in question might not have as many peak experts as the various superpowers, they still had over 300,000 Tier 3 players under their command, with some even having 400,000. Such a large force of Tier 3 players could influence the Twin Towers Kingdom's defensive battle significantly. Even the current Zero Wing only had around 1.2 million Tier 3 players, just the average for a superpower. However, after Fang Shahan took a look at the text on the designs, she immediately fell into a daze. "Guild leader, are you playing a trick on me?" Fang Shahan couldn't help asking. She had seen many treasures during her time in mythology. However, no matter how she looked at the designs for the Blue Thunder flying ship and Flame Beast puppet, she still felt as if she was dreaming. At this stage of the game, the 5 great super guilds had already acquired their own flying ships. However, those were only basic flying ships, which were significantly inferior to the Crimson flying ship, let alone the Blue Thunder flying ship. As for combat puppets, as far as she knew, mythology's strongest combat puppets were 3 mysterious iron combat puppets, which were used to safeguard mythology's main headquarters. Mythology had even tasked Tier 4 NPCs to keep a constant watch on these war weapons to prevent theft. Do you think I need to do that? Shifeng chuckled when he saw Fang Shahan's skeptical look. He could understand Fang Shahan's doubts. Mysterious iron flying ships and secret silver combat puppets shouldn't be available to players at this stage of the game, let alone the designs for them. With these designs, so long as Zero Wing had sufficient materials, it could produce a plethora of these war weapons. And with the power of these war weapons, Zero Wing could devastate the entire continent. Sure. I'll go and reject those guilds now, Fang Shahan said, smiling. A hint of excitement also gleamed in her eyes. Although she had already grown accustomed to holding a powerful identity and position during her time as one of mythology's vice guild leaders, her heart still swelled with excitement and expectations. If Zero Wing could produce the Blue Thunder flying ship and Flame Beast puppet in time, it was almost certain to win the upcoming defensive battle at the Twin Towers Kingdom. Afterward, the 5 first-rate guilds and numerous second-rate guilds peacefully developing in the kingdoms neighboring the Twin Towers Kingdom received Fang Shahan's overbearing response. Fang Shahan did not embellish her message with any redundant words. Instead, her reply contained only one word: scram. The 5 first-rate guilds and many second-rate guilds were dumbfounded upon seeing this response. What arrogance! Zero Wing is simply too arrogant. Zero Wing isn't taking our 5 guilds seriously at all. When the guild leaders of the 5 first-rate guilds, who had gathered for a meeting, saw Fang Shahan's reply, they unanimously jumped out of their seats and cursed in anger. Before the War of Worlds began, the superpowers held incredibly powerful influence over God's domain, such that first-rate guilds like theirs could only bear with the injustice and live with their heads down. However, after the Outer Worlds NPC army invaded, the Eastern Continent's superpowers had no choice but to beg the first-rate guilds for help to defend their territories and routes. Yet despite facing imminent danger, Zero Wing actually dared tell their 5 guilds to scram. Zero Wing was simply tired of living. If Zero Wing wants to be arrogant, let it, the guild leader of Holy Seal sneered as he read Fang Shahan's reply. Once the battle at the Twin Towers Kingdom begins, we'll see how Zero Wing continues behaving arrogantly when it lacks manpower. That's right. Since Zero Wing looks down on us, we'll just help other superpowers. Zero Wing will live to regret its decision today, the guild leader of another first-rate guild said, nodding. If Zero Wing asks us for help later on, it won't get such a good price from us again. Many superpowers had already sent representatives to deliver invitations to their 5 first-rate guilds. Among them, Starlink's offer was particularly generous. Their 5 guilds had no need to worry about finding a superpower to employ them for their services. Their 5 first-rate guilds combined could field a massive army of 1.6 million Tier 3 players and 64 Tier 4 players. Apart from peak experts and apex experts, the alliance of their 5 guilds was not the slightest bit weaker than the average superpower. This was the basis of their confidence. Once their 5 guilds went to aid Starlink and Starlink's side repelled the Outer Worlds NPC army, Zero Wing would definitely regret rejecting their offer. And once Zero Wing came begging them for help, they would thoroughly bleed the guild for every penny it had. The other 3 guild leaders nodded in agreement, wanting Zero Wing to taste the misery of defending the Twin Towers Kingdom without their 5 guilds. Following this, the 5 first-rate guilds collaborated with the uncommitted second-rate guilds and accepted Starlink's invitation to join the Dark Knight Empire's defensive line. This sudden development caught even Lu Tiendi off guard momentarily. Young master, what do you think is going through Black Flame's mind? Yi Kuei asked curiously as he looked at the signed contracts he just received. The combined force of these 5 first-rate guilds is by no means weak, and even the super guilds over at the Fire Dragon Empire have eagerly sought their help. With how much these 5 guilds covet Zero Wing City and Ancient Rock City, even if Zero Wing allots only a small portion of those 2 cities' shares to them, these 5 guilds would probably agree to help Zero Wing. Yet, now, Black Flame is just too prideful. He thinks that just because he is a Tier 5, Sword Saint and God's Domain's strongest player, he doesn't need to fear the Outer World's NPC army, Lu Tiendi said nonchalantly. He doesn't know just how powerful the NPC army is. Once the real battle begins, even Tier 5 players will be nothing but a joke. If it were before Lu Tiendi had clashed with the Outer World's NPC army, he would have considered Shifeng's decision unwise but understandable. After all, Tier 5 players were many times stronger than Tier 4 players. It wouldn't even be surprising to see a Tier 5 player single-handedly destroy a city. However, after experiencing the Dark Knight Empire's defensive battle against the Outer World's NPC army, Lu Tiendi now understood that while Tier 5 NPCs were indeed powerful, they weren't invincible. This was especially true in battlefields that involved war weapons and Tier 4 NPCs using battle arrays. Every targeted city in the Dark Knight Empire would face at least 10 battle arrays formed by Tier 4 NPCs and around 500 Tier 4 NPCs. Even if a superpower dispatched all its Tier 4 players, it wouldn't be able to do a thing against such a force. Not to mention, Zero Wing was going to defend an entire kingdom by itself, so there was no way it could afford to concentrate all its Tier 4 players in one battlefield. Moreover, unlike the previous War of Worlds, the Outer Worlds NPC army had many more Tier 5 NPCs in its ranks this time. Just one Tier 5 player couldn't do anything against the Outer Worlds NPC army. A large number of Tier 3 and Tier 4 players was necessary to whittle down the NPC army and achieve victory. Otherwise, the Outer Worlds NPC army would simply trample over the Twin Towers Kingdom's cities and fortresses. But this is good for us. If not for Black Flame's arrogance, these 5 first-rate guilds wouldn't have joined us, Lu Tiendi said, smiling. Starlink wasn't the only superpower defending the Dark Knight Empire. There were also Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul. Only, the 3 guilds were separately defending their respective territories. If Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul failed to defend the NPC cities and fortresses they operated, both guilds would suffer a major setback. After all, both guilds had their headquarters in the Dark Knight Empire. However, while the Eastern Continent's various superpowers were discussing Zero Wing's unwise decision, Zero Wing continued operating as usual. The guild frenziedly recruited God's Domain's newcomers and sequentially developed Zero Wing City and Ancient Rock City. It also relied on the Tier 3 legacies from the Secret Covenant Tower to steadily increase its Tier 3 population. The 5 first-rate guilds' partnership with Starlink did not affect Zero Wing's operations at all. On the contrary, the number of independent experts coming to help defend the Twin Towers Kingdom even skyrocketed. This was because after Zero Wing garrisoned Starmoon Kingdom's NPC cities established direct teleportation links to Zero Wing's guild cities. This was a great convenience for players seeking to travel to Zero Wing's guild cities. The ability to teleport straight to Ancient Rock City was especially welcomed by players seeking to explore and raid the Orc capital city. Because of the popularity of this new teleportation service, Fang Shahan created a bounty system for Outer World NPCs. Under this bounty system, players would receive 5 points for killing a Tier 3 NPC, 500 points for killing a Tier 4 NPC, and 100,000 points for killing a Tier 5 NPC. Players would also receive ranks according to the points they accumulated. Players that accumulated 100,000 bounty points would receive the bronze rank, which would entitle them to a lifetime discount of 5% on entrance fees and accommodation fees for all of Zero Wing's guild cities. At 1 million points, players would receive the silver rank and enjoy a 10% discount. At 10 million points, players would receive the gold rank and enjoy a 20% discount. After the announcement of this bounty system, over 1 million Tier 3 independent experts and 200 Tier 4 independent experts flooded into the Twin Towers Kingdom's border cities and fortresses from other kingdoms in just one day. All of them sought to accumulate Zero Wing's bounty points to reduce their expenditure in Ancient Rock City and Zero Wing City. The various superpowers grew envious over this situation and promptly adopted Zero Wings ranking system. Only, the results weren't as effective. While independent players were flooding the Twin Towers kingdom, Shifeng gathered the Candlelight trading firm's elites and began frantically researching, then manufacturing the Blue Thunder flying ship and Flame Beast puppet. Manufacturing these two war weapons didn't require just precious materials but also high-level forging techniques, alchemy techniques, enchanting techniques, and knowledge of magic arrays. Grandmaster-level lifestyle players had to take charge of the process. The Blue Thunder flying ship, in particular, required the cooperation of 3 Grandmaster forgers. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. In the current God's domain, only the Candlelight trading firm could provide such manpower. Even after researching for an entire day, Shifeng and the others only managed to scratch the surface of the design. It would take several more days to construct a Blue Thunder flying ship. On the other hand, to Shifeng's joy, both Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose finally made a full recovery. Apart from losing some of their combat memories and having their combat standards weaken slightly, they experienced no other side effects after taking life water. Moreover, the two of them also succeeded in creating their Tier 5 mana bodies and got promoted to Tier 5. This increased Zero Wings' overall combat power by a large margin. On the 5th day, Shifeng and Candlelight's members were working on the Blue Thunder flying ship. Fang Shahan, who was responsible for the Twin Towers Kingdom's defensive preparations, suddenly contacted Shifeng guild leader. The Outer World's NPC army has started moving. Chapter 29:13, Blue Thunder flying ship. Chapter 29:13, Blue Thunder flying ship. An army of more than 10 million NPCs? Shifeng was a little shocked when he read the detailed report Fang Shahan sent him. He had experienced wars between kingdoms and empires in his previous life. However, the kingdoms involved had pitted armies of 1 million NPCs, at most, against each other. These wars had also typically lasted over a month as the involved kingdoms conducted all sorts of battles to annex each other's land. This was because one of the conditions for a kingdom to become an empire was occupying a sufficiently large area of land. In the case of wars between empires, even if 2 empires waged a full-blown war with each other, the total number of NPCs participating would reach only 10 million. Yet, just one of the Otherworld NPC army's several dozen detachments had a force of 10 million NPCs, equivalent to the combatants of 2 empires combined. At their rate of advance, they will reach the Steel Lion Fortress, which is the closest to the border, in 2 hours. Fire Dance and I are on our way there with 800,000 Tier 3 players and 50 Tier 4 players. We should arrive within an hour. As for the 2 other targeted locations, Aqua Rose has garrisoned Thunder Gorge City with 700,000 Tier 3 players and 70 Tier 4 players, while Gentle Snow has garrisoned the Redthorn Fortress with 1 million Tier 3 players and 100 Tier 4 players. As for the independent players, they will probably make their way to these 3 locations soon. The good news is that, according to our investigations, not many Outerworld players are joining the battlefield here, so we shouldn't face as much trouble as the various empires. We only need to focus on the NPC army. Border strongholds generally only had small teleportation arrays, which limited the number of players that could get through. Hence, Fang Shahan could only have everyone hurry over to these strongholds on foot when faced with the Outerworld NPC army's sudden invasion. Shifeng understood their current predicament. Unlike NPCs, players couldn't stay cooped up in a border stronghold forever. They needed to grind for levels and better equipment. Hence, in preparation for the imminent war, most players had chosen to bind their return point to the NPC cities located closest to the border strongholds. Only when the actual war began would they teleport to these NPC cities and travel to the border strongholds on their mounts. I'll leave command to you all for now, but I'll hurry over to help afterward, Shifeng said. 1 hour. With his speed, he could definitely make it to the Steel Lion Fortress within an hour. Currently, the only thing the Blue Thunder flying ship lacked was the core magic array. So long as he finished engraving it, the mysterious iron flying ship would be complete. A mysterious iron flying ship could play a significant role in a defensive siege. Its importance even surpassed 2 or 3 ordinary Tier 5 existences. After Shifeng finished speaking, he promptly disconnected the call and began engraving the core magic array. The core magic array comprised 3 advanced Grandmaster magic arrays. These magic arrays were so complex that even a basic Grandmaster magician wouldn't be able to construct them. This feat should also be beyond Shifeng, who had gotten promoted to Grandmaster magician just recently. However, after his concentration standard reached the Tier 5 peak rank, his brain's activity and computing power had improved drastically. In addition, the core array's 3 advanced Grandmaster magic arrays shared some similarities with some of the magic arrays passed down through the ancient god's legacy. These factors made it possible for Shifeng to carve out the 3 advanced Grandmaster magic arrays. The past 3 failures occurred because of a mistake in the final fusion process. With my degree of control, the magic arrays carved should be perfect, so why can't I merge them? Is my control of magic arrays insufficient? Or is there another problem? Confusion filled Shifeng's mind as he repeatedly inspected the core magic array's design. He had already succeeded in engraving the core magic array without pausing, yet he failed to activate the magic array when he tried injecting mana into it. This was definitely the first time he had encountered such a problem. Typically, if players succeeded in engraving a magic array, the magic array would activate once it received a supply of mana. Only if there was a problem with the magic array would the activation fail. Guild leader, I keep getting the feeling that this core magic array is very strange, Melancholic Smile suddenly said as she looked at the core magic array. Each of the 3 magic arrays in it is meant to absorb one specific type of mana, so why are they forcing these 3 types of mana to fuse afterward? The 3 elements have their own characteristics, how could they be merged into one? Currently, Melancholic Smile was only half a step away from becoming a Grandmaster magician. And because she didn't invest her time in combat, the amount of research she conducted into Grandmaster magic arrays surpassed even Shifeng's. When she first looked at the Blue Thunder flying ship's core magic array, she already found the magic array strange. However, since the flying ship's design stated that the magic array should be constructed that way, she didn't voice her concerns. Now that the core magic array couldn't be activated, though, this proved that there was indeed a flaw in the design. However, Shifeng simply smiled when he heard Melancholic Smile's questions. The various elements of mana indeed have their own operating principles, and merging them is impossible. However, that's not the case for this extraordinary magic array. After absorbing ambient mana, the magic array will first break up the operations of these different types of mana. And before they recover, the magic array will influence them to operate under a new set of operating principles. Although the change will last for only a brief moment, the core magic array can, without a doubt, change the operating principles of mana. Something like that is possible? Melancholic Smile was startled. In her opinion, the operating principles of mana were unchangeable. Take the way some players forcefully manipulated mana to use skills. While these players might succeed in activating their skills, the result would have significantly weaker effects. After all, the mana they manipulated was actively resisting them. For this reason, players who had reached Tier 4 would try to activate their skills and spells by following the operating principles of mana instead of forcing mana to do their bidding. As Shifeng was about to explain further, he suddenly fell into a daze. I see. So, this is the law of destruction's true usage method. An ecstatic expression appeared on Shifeng's face as realization dawned upon him. Recently, he had fallen into despair, as he found himself stuck at Holy Annihilation's entry level. No matter how he tried to convert ambient mana into his own mana, the area he could influence only grew alongside his concentration. While this was indeed the correct way to manipulate mana, it wasn't the case if he was trying to make use of a world law. The reason Holy Annihilation could exhibit such devastating power was a complex destruction magic array designed for the mana technique. The fact that he could utilize the Heavenly Blue Saint's destruction magic array and merge it into various combat techniques and mana manipulation methods proved that he was starting to master the law of destruction. However, he still didn't truly understand how the destruction magic array operated. But Shifeng understood everything now. The law of destruction's essence wasn't to make mana disappear. Instead, it was to break the operating principles of mana, causing mana to lose its original effects. Hence, if he wished to grasp the law of destruction fully, he shouldn't be relying on the destruction magic array to guide mana. Instead, he should rely on his mind to halt the operations of mana naturally. Of course, it was easier said than done. Not only did he need powerful mental strength, but he also had to reverse the operations of different types of mana precisely. Only by doing so could he perfectly stop the operation of mana. At this point, Shifeng finally understood why the core magic array wouldn't activate. So, it is because the strength of my mana is too weak? Shifeng smiled bitterly as he looked at the engraved magic array in front of him. Mana was required to control mana. If a person lacked mana, they naturally couldn't manipulate ambient mana. If one wished to break the operating principles of mana, one would need incredibly powerful mana. Liquid mana wouldn't suffice, one would need solid mana at the very least. Shifeng immediately began concentrating all of the mana within his body, condensing it into a grain of sand that sat on his palm. He then injected the grain of solid mana into the core magic array. Boom! Along with the sound of an explosion, the Blue Thunder flying ship's core magic array came to life. The ambient mana surrounding the flying ship then began flooding the core magic array, becoming fuel for the flying ship's engine. System, congratulations! You have successfully created the Blue Thunder flying ship. Forging proficiency increased by 100 million points. Level increased by 2. Simultaneously, all players who participated in the Blue Thunder flying ship's production received a corresponding amount of EXP and proficiency. Although the amount they received wasn't as exaggerated as Shifeng's, it was still significant nonetheless. Currently, though, nobody paid attention to the reward they just received. Instead, their eyes were all glued to the completed Blue Thunder flying ship. The Blue Thunder flying ship measured 500 meters from stem to stern, and it could carry up to 300 players at a time. It boasted 40 advanced magic elven cannons, each capable of launching attacks at the Tier 5 basic standard, and 12 floating crystal cannons, which could be used for both offense and defense. Offensively, the floating crystal cannons could launch attacks at the Tier 5 basic standard. Defensively, they could withstand attacks even from Tier 5 existences. In addition to these two types of cannons, the flying ship also had a main cannon capable of launching attacks at the Tier 5 intermediate standard. Lastly, the flying ship's flight speed was comparable to that of Tier 5 extraordinary flying mounts. Twin Towers Kingdom, Steel Lion Fortress. Assembled atop the Steel Lion Fortress's 50-meter-tall steel walls were more than 300,000 level 150-plus, Tier 3 NPCs, all geared in level 150-plus dark gold equipment. These NPCs were without a doubt the cream of the crop of the Twin Towers Kingdom's army. There were also close to 30 Tier 4 NPCs standing on the wall, and the one leading these Tier 4 NPCs was a level 200, Tier 4 Sky Knight. The Sky Knight was a man who appeared to be in his late 50s, clad in a complete set of fragmented legendary set equipment. The aura he exuded was comparable to that of an ordinary Tier 5 NPC. Apart from the fortress walls, there were also 24 Tier 4 NPCs chanting an incantation inside the fortress's core control room. Because of these magical class NPCs' manipulation, the fortress's defensive magic array, which used to have only one layer, was now a threefold magic array instead. Even a Tier 5 existence on a rampage wouldn't be able to destroy it. At most, the other party would merely expend some of the fortress's energy supply. A total of 30 magic cannon towers rose above the fortress, and more than 600 large destruction ballistas were set up on the fortress walls. In the sky, 10 flying ships hovered over the fortress, 9 advanced rank and 1 bronze rank. Alongside these flying ships were over 100 Tier 3 and Tier 4 flying mounts. The sight was simply spectacular and absolutely not something anyone would get to see very often. More than 2 million players gathered in the fortress, making the Steel Lion Fortress incredibly crowded. At this moment, though, none of the players inside the Steel Lion Fortress felt relaxed or excited. This was because some distance from the Steel Lion Fortress was an army of over 3 million NPCs, and the number of Tier 4 NPCs in that army exceeded 500. It came bearing various siege weapons, large catapults and advanced mana pulse cannons, which easily numbered more than 1,000. Meanwhile, Hovering above this outerworld NPC army were more than 50 flying ships. 6 of them were bronze flying ships while the rest were advanced flying ships. In combination with the 500+ Tier 3 and Tier 4 flying mounts, they practically blotted out the entire sky. The disparity in combat power between the two sides was clear for all to see. Even the players who came to spectate and conduct a live broadcast of the battle wore gloomy expressions when they saw the Outerworld's NPC army. On the Twin Towers Kingdom's forums, the live broadcasts caused an uproar among the Kingdom's players. Is this the Outerworld's real strength? Can we really hold the Twin Towers Kingdom? Although many of the Twin Towers Kingdom's players had heard bits of information regarding the battles that had taken place at the various empires, the most they got were rumors and some pictures. They didn't have a clear understanding of the Outerworld NPC army's true might. Moreover, as players of another country, they previously considered these battles none of their business. However, after seeing the army outside the Steel Lion Fortress, they felt an indescribable sense of despair. The players standing inside the Steel Lion Fortress especially understood what a war between kingdoms and a war of worlds entailed. Battles between players were nothing compared to a war between worlds. The next moment, amid the anxiety and despair of the Twin Towers Kingdom's players, the commander of the Outerworld's NPC army raised his right hand and swung it forward. Following his actions, both the war weapons on the ground and the flying ships and flying mounts in the sky began advancing. Activate all defenses. Everyone, prepare for battle, the Steel Lion Fortress's commander, Sky Knight Seppel, shouted as he raised his long sword. In response to Seppel's command, the NPCs within the fortress armed the magic cannon towers and large destruction ballistas, narked their bows, and chanted incantations. Shortly afterward, the first exchange between the two sides took place. The sky instantly turned into a sea of flames as explosions of varying degrees shook the sky and the ground. The explosions were so deafening that all of the players inside the fortress felt their heads ring. After taking a look at the burning battlefield, Fang Shahan, who stood atop the fortress wall, turned to the players below the wall. Using a voice amplification spell, she ordered calmly, "Everyone, don't panic. Move as we've planned. Ranged players, head up the walls. Melee players, move to the agreed-upon defensive points. Once the magic barrier breaks, it will be your turn to attack with everything you've got. We must prevent the Outerworld's NPCs from destroying the core magic array at all costs until the magic barrier recovers. So long as we can hold our ground, those Outerworld NPCs will be forced to retreat sooner or later." The fortress's defensive magic array wasn't invincible. In the face of such a powerful offensive, it was only a matter of time before it shattered. Meanwhile, what players like themselves needed to do during this battle was protect the fortress's core magic array while the defensive magic array was down and buy as much time as possible until the defensive magic array came back online. They would also try to kill as many Outerworld NPCs as possible during this time. Once they repeated this cycle a few times, the Outerworld's NPC army would eventually have to retreat. When Fang Shahan finished speaking, many of the players present calmed down, and confidence rekindled in their hearts. NPCs had a very difficult time getting resurrected, and even more so in an intense battle like this. However, it was a different story for players like themselves. If they died, they could be resurrected quickly and rejoin the battle. If there was a healer nearby, they could even be resurrected on the spot at the cost of some EXP. However, 3 minutes after Fang Shahan finished speaking, the sound of glass shattering entered everyone's ears. This sound originated from none other than the Steel Lion Fortress's defensive magic array. "Vanguard! Charge!" the Outerworld Army's commander commanded. Immediately, the Outerworld's Tier 3 NPCs began charging toward the Steel Lion Fortress in a frenzy. As for the Outerworld's Tier 4 NPCs, they flew straight for the Fortress Lord's mansion, attracting the Steel Lion Fortress's Tier 4 NPCs to intercept them. "Trap those Tier 4 NPCs with magic barriers," Fang Shahan hurriedly commanded when she saw the hundreds of Tier 4 NPCs and flying mounts heading into the fortress. "All melee players, stop those Tier 3 NPCs from entering the fortress." At Fang Shahan's command, Zero Wings members promptly deployed the master magic barriers they had prepared, trapping more than half of the Outer World NPCs and flying mounts and isolating them into over a dozen different combat zones. Immediately afterward, the Tier 4 players cooperated with the Fortress's Tier 4 NPCs to engage the Outer World's Tier 4 NPCs and flying mounts. As for the Tier 3 melee players, they cooperated with the Fortress's Tier 3 NPCs to stop the Outer World's Tier 3 NPCs outside the wall. For a time, sounds of battle rang out from all over the Silver Lion Fortress, originating from individual battles, group battles, and one-sided slaughters. On the ground, the Fortress's Tier 3 players were holding up pretty well against the Outer World's Tier 3 NPCs. Although there was indeed a difference in levels and equipment between the two sides, the Tier 3 players managed to mitigate this difference by relying on their superior combat standards and coordination with other players. The difference in numbers between the two sides wasn't overwhelming, either. So, the Fortress's Tier 3 players managed to trade at a relatively good ratio of 2-to-8 with the Outer World's Tier 3 NPCs, with 2 Outer World NPCs dying for every 8 Fortress players. This was undoubtedly a beneficial outcome for the players. However, in the aerial battle, the Twin Towers Kingdom's side had fallen into an absolute disadvantage. Setting aside the difference in the number of flying ships and flying mounts the two sides possessed, just the difference in the number of Tier 4 combatants already posed an insurmountable gap. And worse, the Fortress's magic cannon towers were hardly of any use against the Outer World's Tier 4 combatants. Moreover, if not for Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, and Yang Tianxing working together to hold off the leader of the Outer World Army's vanguard, a level 180, Tier 5 NPC, the advanced master barriers trapping and suppressing more than half of the Outer World's Tier 4 NPCs would have long since been shattered. As for the other Tier 4 experts, apart from those at the Void Realm standard or above, everyone else couldn't even put up a fight against the Outer World's Tier 4 NPCs. The difference in the number of Tier 4 combatants is too great. No wonder the superpowers in the empires are losing fights one after another. At this rate, it won't take more than 10 minutes before the core magic array is destroyed. After killing a level 180, Tier 4 Great Wizard, Fang Shahan glanced at Cola and White Feather, who were doing their best to stop attacks from reaching the Fortress Lord's mansion. When she saw they faced a dozen or so Tier 4 NPCs, she felt powerless. On her side, she only had to handle 3 level 180, Tier 4 NPCs by herself, so she could more or less cope. As for Cola and White Feather, they might not have any problem holding off a dozen or so Tier 4 NPCs by relying on their skills and techniques for now, but that would remain true only while they had skills to use. Not to mention, this wasn't all the Outer World Army had to offer. It had over 500 Tier 4 NPCs in total and even Tier 5 NPCs leading it. The disparity between the Twin Towers Kingdom's army and the Outer World's army was utterly demoralizing. After some more time passed, 8 of the Twin Towers Kingdom's Tier 4 NPCs and more than 20 Tier 4 players fell. In contrast, the Outer World army lost only 6 Tier 4 NPCs, 3 of which were Fang Shahan's kills. The stark difference between the two sides plunged the Tier 4 players into despair. "Keep fighting. We must not retreat on our first battle," Fang Shahan bellowed when she saw her people's demoralized expressions. "Even if we die, we must make these Outer World NPCs pay a sufficient price." Fang Shahan wasn't too surprised that the Steel Iron Fortress's defenses were crumbling. The disparity between the Outer World's army and the Twin Towers Kingdom's army was simply too immense. The only way the Twin Towers Kingdom could emerge victorious was by whittling down the Outer World's army through multiple battles at multiple strongholds. However, the first battle was also when the Twin Towers Kingdom's combat power was at its peak. If the Twin Towers Kingdom failed to deplete a significant portion of the Outer World's army's forces, the subsequent battles would be even more difficult. As soon as Fang Shahan finished speaking, however, the Outer World army's commander, who rode on one of the bronze flying ships, stood up and suddenly released a frightening aura that enveloped the Steel Lion Fortress. Upon coming into contact with this aura, all the players within the fortress felt their heartbeats accelerate and their bodies grow heavier. It was evident that the Outer World army's commander no longer intended to watch from the sidelines and would now enter the battlefield. A level 200, Tier 5 Holy Grail Knight? A solemn expression appeared on Fang Shahan's face when she saw the enemy commander walking step by step in the air. The aura the enemy commander radiated was significantly stronger than what the enemy's vanguard leader radiated. Moreover, he even wielded a legendary greatsword. The enemy commander probably stood at the top even among Tier 5 existences. If the Steel Lion Fortress's defenders had to clash against such an existence, their defensive line would probably crumble in an instant. When the other players saw the enemy commander taking the field himself, none of them had any doubts that this siege battle was over. However, just as the enemy Holy Grail Knight arrived above the Steel Lion Fortress and was about to take action, a deafening roar suddenly came from the distant sky. Before anyone could turn toward the source of the noise, a dark blue behemoth arrived in the airspace above the fortress like a lightning bolt. Both players and NPCs present were startled by the dark blue behemoth's sudden appearance. A flying ship. Is that really a flying ship? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The flying ship above them was simply massive. Even the bronze flying ships, which measured close to 200 meters in length, looked like infants beside the dark blue behemoth. Moreover, this dark blue behemoth distorted the space around it just by hovering in place. The mana within and around the Steel Lion Fortress gathered fervently around this dark blue behemoth, and even the Outer World Army's vanguard commander had the mana in his mana domain drawn away. As the dark blue behemoth began descending toward the fortress, a man wearing a black cloak walked to the bow of the flying ship. Upon seeing this man, the players in the fortress immediately burst into cheers. "Guild leader, you're finally here," Fang Shahan said in a disgruntled tone as she looked at the man standing atop the dark blue behemoth. Shifeng had promised to arrive at the Steel Lion Fortress before the battle began, yet he showed up only after they had been fighting for some time. "Sorry for the long wait, everyone," Shifeng said apologetically as he looked at Fang Shahan and the others. He then shifted his gaze to the Outer World NPC army and smiled, saying, "Now that I'm here, leave the rest to me." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,